الذين ينضموا للاستماع إلى راديو بلدي أول راديو عربي أمريكي ويعنى بقضايا العرب في المهجر. برامجنا في راديو بلدي كل يوم جمعة من 8 وحتى 9 صباحا حتى 9 صباحا مع ليلى الحسيني في بث حي ومباشر عبر WNZK راديو 690 AM. صباح الخير بلدي، صباح الخير لكل مستمعينا.
Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab Middle. Welcome to Radio Baladi, the first Arab Middle Eastern and American. Radio Baladi is broadcast every Friday morning on WNZK 690 AM from 8 until 9 Eastern Time on Good Morning Michigan with Layla Al-Husseini. Our call-in number 248-557-3300. And now, stay tuned for the best radio talk show on Arab and American. Layla Al-Husseini.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arab, WNZK 690 AM and WZMV 700 AM. Good morning, everyone. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, an associate professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Maryland, College Park, and an expert on Arab and Muslim media. We are discussing today an important topic, which is countering radicalization using an interfaith approach. With me this morning to discuss this topic are three important guests, Rabbi Gerald Sirota, Ms. Gail Hamilton, and Imam Bashar Arafat. The media has been recently bombarding us with so many images of radicalization, extremism, fanaticism, and terrorism. We need to understand how can we distinguish between these terms. Can we use them interchangeably? Could they be linked to any one particular group but not another? How can we adopt an interfaith approach to counter these disturbing phenomena? What is the value of using an interfaith approach in order to counter radicalization and extremism? And what could be some of the useful techniques that we can use in this regard? My three distinguished guests this morning, Rabbi Gerald Sirota is the Executive Director of the Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington, IFC. Prior to his position at the IFC, he was the founding executive director of Clergy Beyond Borders. Rabbi Sirota formerly served as a university chaplain and Hillel rabbi for 28 years. The last 20 years were at the George Washington University, where he was chair of the board of chaplains. He also served as president of the Association of Hillel and Jewish campus professionals. My second guest, Ms. Gail Hamilton, is the Vice President of the Global Peace Foundation in the USA. She works specifically as the Director of Interfaith Partnerships and the National Director of the Safe Haven Campaign, Interfaith Alliance to Abolish Human Trafficking, as well. Ms. Hamilton has worked for decades in various international NGOs, many of which were involved in interfaith peace efforts. She lived and worked in Africa for 8 years, serving in the mission and humanitarian aid field. Ms. Hamilton was also instrumental in establishing the humanitarian aid organization called Women for Women in Rwanda in 1997. My third distinguished guest this morning, Imam Muhammad Bashar Arafat, was born and raised in Damascus, Syria. He attended Damascus University and graduated with a degree in Islamic Studies and Arabic language in 1987 and a degree in Islamic law in 1988. He served as Imam in Damascus from 1981 to 1989 and was then invited to the United States to lecture in various Islamic centers. He was Imam of the Islamic Society of Baltimore, Maryland Incorporation from 1989 to 1993, founded a Noor Institute for Islamic Studies and Arabic Language in Baltimore in 1993, co-founded a Noor Mosque in Maryland, and was also Imam from 1995 to 1997 there. Currently, he is the president of Islamic Affairs Council of Maryland based in Baltimore, as well as heading the Center for the Exchange of Civilizations and Better Understanding for Better World Initiative, and also founding Al-Bashir, which is a project for preparing the imams of the future. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for accepting the invitation. It's indeed my honor and pleasure to have three distinguished guests with me this morning to discuss this important topic. And as an academic, I'm always fascinated with definitions. I don't think we can talk about a phenomena without first giving it a clear definition. And I'm somehow puzzled and sometimes confused by the fact that some of these terms are used interchangeably in the media. You hear terms like radicalization, fanaticism, extremism, terrorism, and people use them interchangeably. Do these terms actually mean the same thing? Or can we draw some distinctions between them? I will address the question to every one of you in turn. I'll start with Rabbi Sirota.
Well, I think you could make a distinction, and ought to, between radicalization and extremism and fundamentalism. I think all of us would argue about our own faith traditions that true fundamentalists who return to the sources, to the Torah, to the Quran, to the Christian scriptures, are not radical, are not violent, and are not extreme. Those texts are texts of moderation. The problem of the world we live in is grave ignorance, both of other faiths and of our own traditions. So the descriptions are political descriptions. Extremism and fanaticism are a description of somebody who acts violently, not who believes strongly. So I really make a distinction between a strong person of faith, who, in my understanding of at least the faith that derived from Ibrahim, is that they preach moderation, they teach peace, but there are many, many followers who are not familiar with the basic text and have created the problem that we have in modernity. So it's an interfaith problem, and we don't understand each other, and it's a problem of people understanding their own text. That means it's a problem for religious leaders as well, I have to admit. Much of the problem comes from the misapplication of the basic text.
Mm-hmm. Right. Thank you so much. And Ms. Gail Henderson, if you can also comment on the very same notion of how can we distinguish between some of these terms which are used in the media oftentimes interchangeably.
Well, I just have to concur with Rabbi Sirota. He pretty much said it all. I find the usage of these terms also, very frustrating because I know so many people whose faith is so fervent and so deep, and at the same time, they're the most peaceful people I've ever met in my life. And I'm talking about very diverse faith leaders from diverse traditions. So I'm very grateful that for this program, and that this information can get out to everyone, because we need clarification on these terms. And a person who's fervent and zealous and deeply faithful is, as Rabbi Sirota said, someone who teaches peace.
Absolutely. So it all boils down to our own understanding of our own religious texts and our own scriptures. And Imam Bashar, if you'd also like to join the conversation and tell us your own take on this distinction, which is most needed between these terms.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure and honor to be with your guests, and I just would like to again echo what Ms. Gail and the Rabbi said, and this is really an issue that the interfaith community really has to constantly bring it up, because unfortunately we are living in a time where the media, whether intentionally or unintentionally, confusing let me talk about the non-Muslims, because most of the time those issues are mentioned, and in the past maybe 30 years we are talking about Islamic this, Islamic that, and you have sometimes ignorant politicians who intentionally also confuse the public, whether in America or Europe, and indirectly they are creating also hatred within our society. And it is the responsibility of the interfaith community really to respond and to make these definitions very clear. So in Islam, for example, have it so clear that when the Prophet himself addressed the group of his disciples who came, and some were saying, I'm going to stay the rest of, all that night, and I'm not going to rest. And somebody said, I'm going to always, and somebody said, I'm not going to marry. So all of them were drawing comparison between them and the Prophet, that they should be in their worship, determined to work really, really, really hard. And the Prophet heard them when he was in his room, and he went out to them and said, who are those who are trying to take, our religion to extremes? I do pray and I rest, and I do marry, and I do eat meat, and I do basically enjoy the blessings that Almighty blessed us with. That's a lesson for all of us, not to go to the extreme in any way, in any shape, in any form. And throughout the history, we have seen scholars addressing those issues. But today, when you have political movements, and when you have political parties, when you have groups who are trying to, as we say, take the law in their hands and bring their own definition to what's going on, and then when you have also issues in the Middle East, and even from previous century, we have lingering issues of colonialism. So really things are, and the people here in the United States really need to have constantly messages from the interfaith leaders to clarify issues and to clarify things, because basically the Quran asks us not to be in the path of radicalism or extremism or fanaticism, or of course that term fundamentalism, which is not an Islamic term, by the way. It came from the medieval times, from the Christian practice. Some of the Christians were, fundamentalists, because there is nothing, a Muslim who prays 5 times and fasts Ramadan, and a Muslim woman who covers her hair, those are the fundamentals of Islam. But today, so many words are taken out of context. So really, I'm glad to have a show that addressed these issues.
And I'm glad you raised the issue about fundamentalism in particular, because sometimes I'm alarmed by the fact that these terms get so confused and so messed up together that to many people who may not be versed in any particular religion or scripture, or don't have any kind of sufficient knowledge on the topic, might very well confuse and conflate, like you just mentioned now, anyone who practices their own faith and religion, with zeal and with piety, can mistake them for someone who has some kind of extremist tendency or some willingness to go on a more radical path, while indeed, as you just mentioned now and the other guests have clarified earlier, this should not and need not be the case, because all religions do not preach radicalization or extremism. Rather, they do foster moderation and the acceptance of the other. We will come back again to visit this important topic right after this commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
Jumana Keyrus. You've seen her images on giant billboards across the metro. Jumana Keyrus. You've seen her images on buses across the city. Now get to know Jumana K-Ruz.
Most people who sit in my office across from my desk are hurting on so many levels. One thing people do not know about medical malpractice is that the statute of limitation, meaning the time that you have to bring suit against a doctor, a hospital, is 2 years. In medical malpractice, that's a very, very short period of time. Not every lawyer is an advocate, but every lawyer should be an advocate.
Let Jumana K-Ruz protect your rights. Call the law offices of Jumana K-Ruz at 1-866-YOUR-RIGHTS, extension 100, or visit yourrights.com.
Ziyad brand. Quality products from our family to yours. Ziyad Brothers Importing offers the finest quality products, including brands like Sultan, Kraft, Nestle, Hook, Rico Picon, Donna, and many more. Ask your retailer to carry these fine products because you deserve the very best. For more information, visit our website at www.ziyad.com. That's www.ziyad.com. Ziyad, quality products from our family to yours.
Life for Relief and Development is a nonprofit charity that has been providing humanitarian aid and development to people and communities regardless of race, color, religion, or cultural background for over 22 years. When disaster occurs here or around the world, Life rushes to provide food, medical aid, and shelter to those in need. Life also has development projects that provide medical relief, water purification, educational programs, relief for orphans, and much more. Your help and support can greatly improve these efforts. All donations are tax deductible. For more information, please visit our website at lifeusa.org or call 248-424-7493. That's lifeusa.org, 248-424-7493.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arab, WNZK 690 AM and WZMV 700 AM. Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, and we are discussing today a very important topic, countering radicalization from an interfaith approach and perspective. And with me this morning are three distinguished guests in the interfaith community, Rabbi Gerald Sirota, Ms. Gail Hambleton, and Imam Muhammad Bashar Arafat. Before the commercial break, we were talking about the definitions of some of the key terms which oftentimes get conflated and confused, like extremism, fanaticism, radicalization, and fundamentalism. I'd like now to move to the causes, the root causes of creating this disturbing phenomena of radicalization or extremism and some of its ugly manifestations, like carrying out violent or terrorist acts. What could be defined or pointed out as some of the root causes for this growing phenomena? And I'll start with Rabbi Sirota.
Well, my brother and dear friend Imam Bashar started with some of the historical factors that are in the background of violence in parts of the world and extremism, the aftermath of colonialism. I would add, and certainly our friend Gail, who spent a lot of time in Africa, extreme poverty leads to extreme reaction. There's violence that we don't see in poverty and oppression and dictatorship. The stifling of human potential leads to, sadly, to violence. Structural violence leads to violence in response. It doesn't have to, and it doesn't succeed. Nonviolent resistance to all of those phenomena, and of course the generous sharing by those who have more with those who have less, can avert some of the problems of extremism. But we have it in this country too, with the growing extremes of wealth and poverty. Enough causes to create social violence. The issue that's important to the program is, how does religious tradition get entwined with these violent responses, and why isn't religion more of the solution? Why isn't the faith of a Dr. Martin Luther King, for instance, applied more in the areas where it would be effective in creating social change? So there are social conditions and terrible degradation that exists in modernity that has led people to very extreme responses. Some of which then get tied into religion, but they're not religious responses, or at least there are alternative religious responses. I don't believe there's such a thing as a holy war. I think any tradition that I know, that expression is an oxymoron. With social conditions of which when we're talking about the Arab world and the Middle East and Africa, we're talking about still responses to colonialism and the failure of the societies that are more developed to be generous with the societies that need support.
I want to thank you so much for raising this particular issue about the intertwining of this term or this phenomena with religion, because some people, unfortunately and sadly enough, would very much point their fingers to religion, to faith, as if it is the root cause of the problem. They would say religion is the problem. I heard this in many discussions, and it's an ongoing misperception, which I would like my other guests to also elaborate on. Imam Bashar, would you like to add to this point about how religion gets dragged into this discussion and sometimes even mistakenly pointed out as the root cause of the problem when we talk about things like radicalization and fanaticism?
Exactly. I mean, I really, I'm delighted that I have Rabbi Jerry with us, because I have worked with him, and I'm really proud to say that the work we have done together through different programs here in the Washington area and Clergy Beyond Borders, and traveling together on different caravans and build these relations and to address issues together is so much needed today. And when he spoke about poverty, for example, let me share with you, just 2 weeks ago here in Baltimore, I mean, we lived this nightmare, which could be repeated in different major cities in the United States. This has nothing to do, again, with religion. It's something has to do with so much social ills we have here. So this is another problem, which, by the way, I really feel disgusted that I see the media every day showing me about ISIS and Daesh, and does not show me also what's happening in the streets of Baltimore or in the streets of Philadelphia. And that this is also other problems way more important to a lot of Americans than what's going on in Syria and in Iraq. Not to say that what's happening is not important. No, it is. But what I'm saying that I agree that sometimes the religion is brought into the equation, while the root cause is really either politics or money or domination, and we have seen that throughout the history. So this is, especially now in the age of social media and the internet, those issues really has to constantly be brought up. And also in the age of control of the media that choose what to show the public and make it as if the whole world problem is religion, and it's absolutely not religion, but the religion is brought into the problem, and the people are using the religion to support their own views, whether those who are, in the Middle East are trying to use religion and to, make a change on the ground, or, they have their own hidden agenda. I mean, take what's going on right now in Yemen, for example, and when the people are fighting, and it all boils down, whether it is in Yemen or in Iraq, and the ethnic tension and the sectarianism. And again, the religion is brought, but actually there are interests of other countries who are dominant in the region. And then you have also the interest of bigger countries also who are having interest in the region. So again, religion is brought into the picture. Take the issues of fanatic groups and extremist groups who out of sudden started, growing in the Middle East and in other countries using religion. Take Al-Qaeda, take Al-Nusra, take Al-Shabaab, take Boko Haram. I mean, those who are really looking deeper, they will see also interest for other countries that these extremist groups are giving excuses for others to interfere in all of these areas around the world. So again, the interfaith community, who is supposedly has to work sincerely for the sake of God on the surface of this earth, following the footsteps of Moses, Jesus, and Muhammad, peace be upon all of them, that we have to be honest and sincere and saying it the way it is, without twisting of the facts.
Absolutely. Thank you, Imam Bashar, for this important insight. And both you and Rabbi Sirota agreed that there is a very complex set of factors and causes behind these phenomena, economically, socially, politically, and it's quite unfair and inaccurate to just blame it on religion. And Ms. Gail, would you like to add something to this discussion? Any of the other root causes that you might see behind the phenomena and why it has been growing?
Sure. Rabbi and Imam are always stealing my words. So I totally echo all of the points that they have made, and just like to add, because I get so frustrated with the media in general, how it's really exacerbating and fomenting these problems. It's extremely frustrating. However, I think just to try to look at what we as voices of faith how can we ameliorate the situation? How can we, have a voice? Again, we're very, very grateful for this opportunity. We're on media now and we're speaking out, which is absolutely wonderful. I think that we can work with our brothers and sisters from all faith traditions too, also to help craft a new language and to encourage faith leaders to come into the public square and to speak about their faith, but in terms of the universal principles and values that we hold dear. That if we can speak in the public square with respect and sensitivity and in a very inclusive language, then perhaps we will be able to be invited into the public square, more. If we leave the language of conversion and the exclusivity, aside, and we come into the public square and really show strength in our unity, in our common humanity, our common identity, which we are all created by God, and we have one Creator, and these kind of broad universal principles, and build upon them. Actually, faith leaders really have a lot of power or influence if we can marshal the moral authority of faith leaders to bring cohesion in our society and to show solidarity together. I think that would be so inspiring and hopeful for people, and then just try to be a louder voice.
Absolutely, and we will definitely come back again right after this commercial break to visit this very important point. Please stay tuned.
قشات ميديترينيان ماركت بإدارة سهر قشات وأولاده يرحبون بالجالية العربية والكلدانية. جميع أنواع المواد الغذائية، البان طازجة، الكرزات والبهارات الطازجة. داخل الأسواق مطعم ميديترينيان شيش كباب يقدم يوميا جميع أنواع الكباب، المقبلات العربية العراقية وصواني الكامبو المميزة. تفتح الأسواق من 8 إلى 9 مساء من الاثنين وحتى السبت، ومن 8 صباحا إلى 9 مساء يوم الأحد. تقع الأسواق على 2839 North Western Highway في مدينة فارمينغتون هيلز. لحوم حلال للجالية الإسلامية. لطلباتكم من المطعم call 248-538-7855. That is 248-538-7855. قشات ميديترينيان ماركت، خدمة متميزة ومعاملة راقية.
From their first words to first grade, Dreamy Children's Center will help get your child on the right track. The highly qualified staff works closely with parents to provide an experience that goes beyond early education. We can help nurture important personality traits with the use of educational programs ranging from preschooling for infants to Montessori-approved programs and bilingual curriculums for young children. All meals can be provided and we can arrange for after-school pickup. Dreamy Children's Center in Dearborn Heights on Warren, in Westland on Ann Arbor Trail, and in Troy on DeQuinder.
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arab, WNDK 690 AM and WZMZ 700 AM. Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis, Associate Professor in the Department of Communication at the University of Maryland and an expert on Arab and Muslim media. We are discussing today countering radicalization from an interfaith perspective. And with me this morning are three leaders in the field of interfaith, Rabbi Gerald Sirota, Ms. Gail Hamilton, and Imam Muhammad Bashar Arafat. Right before going to the break, Ms. Gail, you were talking about some of the reasons why an interfaith approach to countering radicalization could be particularly important and helpful. In fact, I met you and Rabbi Sirota when you were part of a panel, a part of the Rumi Forum on the very same topic of countering radicalization from an interfaith perspective. And I would like you to elaborate a little bit more on the importance of this interfaith approach and what your own organization, Global Peace Foundation, has been doing in this regard.
Well, thank you. Yes, I think that as we see many youth, vulnerable youth, as we have talked about before, from around the world who are responding to the message of radicalization, we look deeply and we see that they're really seeking for meaning and purpose in their life, and that's why we really need to turn to the age-old faith traditions for, a deeper sense, a true sense of meaning and purpose. In Nigeria, Global Peace Foundation has a One Family Under God campaign, and One Family Under God is actually the vision of Global Peace Foundation in terms of really encouraging people to go deeper in their sense of identity, the root of our identity being that we are all human beings, that we are part of the family of humankind. And so in Nigeria, this One Family Under God campaign is facilitating workshops of Christian youth, Muslim youth, and really helping through managed contact to build lasting and sustaining relationships between the youth, and highlighting and focusing on the universal principles that are held by both of these faith traditions. And so there's a lot of momentum building with this One Family Under God campaign. And even in the USA, we have a program that we're launching called Cross-Community Engagement in cities where there is a real diverse population, bringing youth together in a managed situation. And we're in partnership with Cooperation Ireland. And Cooperation Ireland is a long-time nonprofit, 30 years, where they have a track record of really being centrally instrumental in bringing the peace there in Ireland after all the years of what they term as the Troubles. So, but I think one conclusion that we came to in our forum that we were speaking together, and I think it was Rabbi Sirota that made the point, is that there are not just Global Peace Foundation, but the Interfaith Conference, the Imam mentioned the Clergy Beyond Borders. There are organizations that are facilitating this kind of establishing, deep and true relationships and friendships between people of different faiths, not only friendships, but, working together, the Interfaith Alliance to Abolish Human Trafficking, and working together with National Council of Jewish Women and, many people from a lot of different faith traditions are forming up a team of to end the scourge of human trafficking. So I think the more that society can really support and uplift these kinds of efforts, and that these kinds of efforts can be known, generally speaking, and supported, it will be a good thing.
Absolutely. We need to amplify the voices of goodwill and good deeds, that's for sure. And following up on what you just mentioned, also I would like to invite Rabbi Sirota. Your work with Clergy Beyond Borders and also with the Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington has been remarkable and has been uploaded. And I would like you to elaborate a little bit on why, again, these particular initiatives are important when it comes to interfaith approach being used to counter radicalization and extremism.
Yes, I'm glad to, and I'm glad you mentioned Clergy Beyond Borders, which is a project, as Imam Bashar mentioned, we've traveled together, and to some extent, as a clergy organization, there is a countering of stereotypes in the media. It still surprises me every time I speak together with Imam Bashar or Imam Sharif of Masjid Muhammad here in Washington, that people find it amazing that a rabbi and an imam would share a platform, would share a kiss, should speak together and feel that we're brothers, which we are. It's surprising to me that anybody would see it any differently, but sadly the media portrays it otherwise, is always looking for stories of conflict. So the journeys of reconciliation that we've done, Clergy Beyond Borders has done throughout this country, are partly demonstrating a counter-narrative to the media. The Interfaith Conference in Metropolitan Washington has 11 different faith communities. It goes from Baha'i to Zoroastrian, not just the faiths that derive from the descendants of Hajar and Sarah. I don't like to call them Abrahamic faiths all the time. If we didn't have Sarah and Sarah, we wouldn't have any descendants of Ibrahim. So there, our work is primarily dialogue and community building, We do dinner dialogues in people's homes. We produce a curriculum called Strengthening Teaching About Religion, which has, from the adherents of the 11 faiths that are part of our organization, the teachings on their text, on the environment, on a whole set of common questions. So if any of your listeners are in the metropolitan Washington area and are interested, they can contact Interfaith Conference of Metropolitan Washington by its initials, ifcmw.org. Mm-hmm. We're happy to involve people from all backgrounds, and our work is primarily educational. When we can find common ground, as we certainly would in opposing trafficking, in opposing poverty and homelessness, we do work together on issues of social concern. But our primary purpose is for people to meet each other where they are and to learn about each other, which, after all, is what the Quran says. The reason that God has provided many opportunities and many faiths is that we will come to know one another, ta'arufu, and yes, to challenge each other and compete with each other in doing the good. So that's what we do at our best at the Interfaith Conference, following and exemplifying that teaching of the Holy Quran.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And Imam Bashar, I know that you are having 3 very important initiatives: the Center for Exchange of Civilizations, and also Better Understanding for a Better World, as well as Al-Bashir, which is meant to prepare the preachers of the future. If you can tell us in a nutshell the importance of each one of these 3 initiatives in terms of countering the phenomena of radicalization and extremism and bringing about an interfaith approach in confronting it.
Thank you very much. Well, the Better Understanding for a Better World conference that we just ended, the 23rd annual conference, really focus on the international exchange students who come to the United States every year from all over the world. And we get in our conferences that are held in Orlando, Florida, or San Diego, California, or Baltimore, Washington, students from almost 40 countries, and we facilitate this kind of discussion in order to see that this cultural diversity we have in our world should be used as a blessing, not as a curse. And also, this religious diversity should not lead for war and hatred, but it should lead us to respect the differences we have and we had throughout the history. But I found now through all of these conferences that the students themselves, and those are the best of the best who are coming from all over the world, and they live here in the United States for 1 year, it is very important for them to see the positive side we have in the United States, where, thank God, we have a wonderful history of respect of cultural diversity and religious diversity. Yes, we have sometimes some odd voices that really do not represent the majority, but they do represent some minorities here and there, even though they are very vocal. But I see that this opportunity for the students who are coming through the taxpayers' money, really it will benefit them to see the wonderful things also we have in the United States, because they might not have this opportunity back home in their countries to be exposed to all of these cultures and all of these religions. So I found that working with the youth is extremely rewarding and beneficial, because they go back and they say, this was really an eye-opening experience for me. The other thing really I saw it important is to reach out to my fellow clergy from the Christian and the Jewish faith, and also provide programs, short programs and a little bit longer programs, some in the United States and some overseas, like the program we have done last year to Morocco by taking Episcopalian and Catholic clergy, and to focus on spirituality and giving in Ramadan, because unfortunately, due to what's happening all over the world with the issues of confrontations and militancy here and there, the wonderful issues of spirituality we have, and that bonds all of us together, is really overlooked. And like I was in a retreat just last month in Tampa, Florida, and I was invited by the Franciscans, and I said, it's really strange that we don't also speak about the Sultan who welcomed St. Francis in the medieval times, and how St. Francis was impacted by the depth of spirituality in Islam after had that encounter with the Sultan and the people around him, and came back, and he was emphasizing on all issues of peace and the things that makes for peace. So I found also that focusing on spirituality is something.
We have to come back again to this
really
topic.
has to be.
Sorry to interrupt, but I'm sorry to interrupt, but we have to go back for a commercial break right now. We will revisit again this very important topic right after the commercial break. Stay tuned, please.
الافتتاح الكبير لأسواق زمزم على 24065 أورشارد ليك في مدينة فارمينغتون هيلز، تنزيلات كبيرة على عموم المواد الغذائية، فريش كاري أوت، جميع أنواع المعجنات وصمون الحار، أيضا صواني الكامبو المشكلة، لحوم حلال للجالية العربية والإسلامية، الملحمة بإدارة قصاب الجالية المعروف سلوان جربوع. Call them at 248-476-0300 248-476-0300. أسواق زمزم للمذاقي، عنوان زوروهم على 24065 أورشارد ليك في مدينة فارمينغتون هيلز، أو call them at 248-476-0300 248-476-0300. أسواق زمزم للمذاقي، عنوان.
Are you going to start up a restaurant or a grocery store soon? Do you need floor plans and designs? Call Najee Abood at 248-442-9292. Do you want to buy kitchen and restaurant equipment at discount prices? Call Najee Abood now, 248-442-9292. New Concept Products and Designs, the trademark of kitchen equipment. 5% discount on all purchases of $75,000 or more. For more information, visit newconceptproducts.com, 248-442-9292. It's never too...
This is Dr. Sahar Khamis. Join me on the third Friday of each month at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll be discussing some of the most important current political, economic, and social issues in my program, The Bridge. On Radio Baladi, on America's Voice of the Arab, WNDK 690 AM and WZMV 700 AM. Welcome back to the show, everybody. This is your host, Dr. Sahar Khamis. We are discussing today countering radicalization from an interfaith perspective and approach. With me this morning are Rabbi Gerald Sirota, Ms. Gail Hambleton, and Imam Bashar Arafat. Right before going to the break, Imam Bashar, you were talking about some of the examples of the interfaith work that has been done through your own organization, and also some initiatives which are particularly important. I would like you to just, in a nutshell, like 1 minute, explain to us the importance of a project like Al-Bashir, which prepares the future religious leaders and preachers of the Muslim faith. Why would this be particularly important right now, and how can this tie in to the notion of countering radicalization?
Because, the experience of imams in America really today has to be shared with imams from Africa, the Middle East, and Asia. We are living in a very globalized world right now, and it's getting smaller and smaller. And I have realized that the lack of addressing those issues in curriculums in other religious schools in other countries is really impacting the performances of the imams who are now finding themselves wanting to migrate to Europe or to the United States, but they have never had an opportunity to study cultural diversity or religious diversity from a global perspective. But sometimes they might look at those issues from, comparative between and among religions rather than cooperation among religions, and how to cooperate, because we don't want to lose ourselves in the differences. We want also to go beyond these differences and to see those areas of cooperation which way more than the areas of differences.
Absolutely, and I also know that you for sure provide them also the opportunity to get better training in terms of being well-versed in media, in technology, in language, in cultural experience, which I think is very important. And this coupled with better understanding for a better world, which invites students from overseas to spend a year in the U.S. and to experience a different cultural exposure, I think are very, very important initiatives.
Thank you.
Ms. Gail, you talked earlier about the media, and Rabbi Sirota also talked about the narrative and the counter-narrative. As a media scholar, this is something which is very important to me. And I think that the media, unfortunately, has played more of a negative rather than a positive role in this whole situation by just focusing on, the bad, the ugly, and the evil. Or as they say in the media, when it bleeds, it leads. What could be done in order to counter some of these narratives in the media, or to present, as Rabbi Sirota mentioned, the counter-narrative? I'll start with Ms. Gail.
Well, maybe the three of us need to appeal to CNN or create, some programming that is exciting and compelling, but totally positive. Yeah, it would be great to be able to get on the mainline channels, but that's a huge challenge, as we all know. So I think perhaps through social media, I know that with the Alliance, Interfaith Alliance to Abolish Human Trafficking, we've had amazing connections being made through social media. Also, I'm doing a webinar with the United Religions Initiative that will reach nationwide and Canada. So, but perhaps through webinars, there's strength in numbers. So it's so wonderful to be with the imam and the rabbi, and maybe we can connect, make more and more connections by webinars and social media.
Absolutely, and social media is exactly where the future is. It is where young people are 24/7 almost, and they master the social media art, and they don't even watch the mainstream TV anymore. So maybe we should invest more of our time and effort there. Rabbi Sirota, you mentioned earlier that sometimes people get surprised when they see an imam and a rabbi and a priest hugging and having friendship and connection, and because this is very much the counter-narrative to what we are seeing in mainstream media. Again, your comments and thoughts around this important point, and what could be done about it?
Well, I agree with Gail, but I don't think we have to rely entirely on media, new media or traditional media. I think it does behoove clergy and religious leaders to get on the road, as we did with Clergy Beyond Borders in journeys, because it has an impact. It has an impact on children in a church that we visit. It's the young people that are key to changing the narrative and the story. So it requires an aggressive campaign. There are two types of campaigns, though, and we've only spoken about the interfaith side. Each of us has to work within our own traditions to do what I would call healing work. I was at a conference on Christian unity last week, and they proudly passed around a version of the Bible, I think was called the Justice and Poverty Bible, where it underlined the text that had anything to do with justice and poverty, according to the editor who produced this text. And I held it up in front of I saw it for the first time. I held it up in front of the participants. It has, a few lines here, a few lines there, and a lot of white spaces, which are not considered texts that have anything to do with justice. We need to be working on the white spaces in our own traditions, in those texts that appear to not be related to justice and God's God's love and concern for all of humanity, there is some reason why people call themselves fundamentalists, believe that their own traditions advocate violence against the other or hatred against the other. And we have to root out that feeling and that idea that that's what our texts teach. They have a case to be made. I think they're reading those texts incorrectly, but I wouldn't underestimate the healing work that we have to do. I have to work on healing Judaism. My friends have to work on healing Islam and Christianity and Buddhism and Hinduism, even those gentle philosophies and theologies from the Far East can be misunderstood and used to demonize the other. So we do have a job to do within our own traditions.
Absolutely. I thank you for bringing up this point about not just the need for an interfaith, but also intra-faith within every religion itself to work on this important healing work that you mentioned. And again, I would like to reiterate the importance of seeing people from different faith traditions, rabbis, imams, preachers, priests, coming together to stand in the face of any evil and to do more good. In the couple of minutes remaining in our program, Imam Bashar, very quickly, there have been people who have been loudly critical of the Countering Violent Extremism Initiative, abbreviated as CVE, that has been going on lately by saying that it simply profiles Muslims, it singles out Muslims as the root cause of the problem of radicalization, and by doing so, it invites more negative misrepresentations of Islam and Muslims and can even lead to profiling or other hate crimes against Muslims. In exactly 2 minutes, can you tell us your thoughts around this?
Thank you. Yes, this is really an issue has to be wider than what some are trying to, make it only a problem with Islam. And I don't agree with what a lot of those groups are doing in the name of Islam, whether it is ISIS or its likes. But at the same time, there are issues that has to be addressed, whether it is social justice or dictatorship in the Middle East. But at the same time, the Muslims themselves, they have to really have their own conferences and to see and to revisit these issues of sectarianism and not to let outside forces hiking that issue to an extent of hate and fighting each other, because what's happening today in the Middle East is really it is a failure also for the religious institutions who are not paying attention to that issue and have constant meetings, let's say between the Sunnah and the Shia. Today, we don't see those meetings regularly to an extent that, we had a meeting just a couple of days ago, me and another Shia scholar here in the Washington metropolitan area, that it's really our responsibility here in the United States also not to let these issues come from overseas to harm the Muslim community in the United States. But at the same time, when it comes to CVE, I don't think it's healthy for all of us to make it only a problem within Islam, because this is something you have seen it in the past among Christians and among Jews who take also their religion to the extreme and they propagate violence.
So you have to understand that radicalization is really a disease or an issue that cross-cuts all different groups, and we have to stand united facing this kind of danger, and this is exactly the great kind of work that the three distinguished guests this morning, Rabbi Gerald Sirota, Ms. Gail Hambleton, and Imam Muhammad Bashar Arafat, have been remarkably doing. And for that, I want to warmly thank you, not just for being my guests and honoring me this morning by being on my show, but also for all the great work you're doing out there. Thank you.